Thank you very much for being on our show. Really excited to have you here today. And what I want to do is I really want to go I want to ask you to talk through your journey with me. But I'm intrigued to hear the very beginning. How did you get started as an entrepreneur? Did you, as a child, have ambitions?
Um, I don't think as a child I understood what it was to be an entrepreneur, but as early as age 12 or 13, I was going door to door selling greeting cards. I had a paper route at like 15. So I'd always done things to generate an income or make money, but I never looked at it as being an entrepreneur. When I was in college, I started doing some art therapy for people in convalescent homes through some other company. In the US, I was a 1099 employee or paid as a 1099 independent contractor, not as an employee. And the first job I got was as a school teacher after I graduated from college. And it was fun, but I wasn't able to earn enough money to support my wife and a new child. So I went into sales again and did okay, and decided I should look for something that would be a business or an industry that's been around for a long time, that would probably continue to be around for a long time. And it would deal with something that's always been around, which was money. And I went into the insurance business as a life insurance agent. So again, I'm doing sales and I'm getting paid based on what I can produce. The only job I had, so if I wasn't an entrepreneur, I at least was a salesperson having some control over my income. And the first job I actually got after a school teacher was as the director of pensions for an insurance company. And it was really nice. I had a steady income. I had an assistant. They gave me a car, expense account, all those things. And it lasted 3 months before they merged with another company and I lost my job. They just fired everyone on the fourth floor. So what I realized was I was really too insecure to be an employee. Now that sounds kind of funny when you think about, wait a second, no, having a job, being an employee, that is security. No, it's complete insecurity, because what you're stuck with is having 100% of your income coming from one source. And if they fire you, if they merge with another company, if their business gets bad, if they have to do layoffs, you lose 100% of your income, but you still have 100% of your bills. Absolutely. I think that's the most insecure place to be. So what I realized was I'm more comfortable having my income coming from several sources. And that can either be as a salesperson or as an entrepreneur. And so following that, getting fired from the insurance company, I and 2 other partners started our own pension administration company. And we built it up from the initial 30 that one of the partners had to 300. We ended up selling it off to a public company. But the point is, we had 300 people paying us an income. If someone didn't like us and went somewhere else, it really didn't matter. It didn't change our income that much. So what I realized is that I want to have a bunch of people paying me, not one paycheck from an employer. And so that's continued on since my 30s. I've tried other things. I had an art gallery business, which failed and I went broke. I found out an interesting statistic. Most millionaires went broke or declared bankruptcy 3 times before they really made it. And I realized, well, I didn't declare bankruptcy the 3 times I went broke. I did go broke 3 times, having to start all over. There were 2 divorces and this art gallery business failure. And by the time I'm 50 and starting over for the third time, I'm married to my current wife now 24 years. And I decided I always enjoyed and seemed to really understand real estate. So I did what I would call something that's been around for 5,000 years. I set aside a little bit of money as I was earning it. And Danny, have you heard of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon?
It is quite a well-known book. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the gold standards of handling money. And it says set aside 10% first before you do anything else. Pay yourself like you deserve to own some of the money you're working for. So I was doing business coaching. I'm earning about $5,000 a month. Again, this is about over 25 years ago. And I'm setting aside $500 a month. So in 3 years, I saved up $18,000. And my wife at the time had a realtor who said, Rennie, you ought to buy this 3-unit property. Now, 14 years earlier, I'd taken a class at UCLA on how to manage apartment buildings profitably. So I was able to put this information to use, except the $18,000 was not enough as the down payment by myself. And this is why I say wealth creation. It doesn't matter if it's wealth creation, business development. It's a team sport, not a solo sport. So the realtor put down half the down payment, $36,000. I had the $18,000 and my wife had $18,000, and the three of us bought this property together. We cleaned it up, we re-rented it, and within 4 years, my $18,000 share was now worth $125,000. And in the United States, we have a thing called a tax-deferred exchange. We sold that building. There was a $500,000 profit. And with the tax-deferred exchange, we could roll all that profit without having to pay any capital gains taxes on it into a property similar to what we were selling. So one commercial property into another commercial property, you can avoid, well, defer the taxes. So we sold that and went from a 3-unit to a 14-unit. And along the way, I borrowed money to make down payments with my wife and the realtor on more buildings. And we went from that first 3-unit purchase, within 5 years, we had 47 more units. So that was what set me up. I went from flat broke at age 50 to age 58, where I could choose to work or choose not to work.
So I'm really fascinated to know, how did you go flat broke?
How did it go? Oh, it was the second divorce. So there was the first divorce. There was the the art gallery was the first failure. The first divorce was the second time I went broke. And the second divorce was the third time I went broke.
But it also sounds like there was some underlying issues of how you were managing money.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no question. This is frustrating to me. I was certified as a financial planner. And as a part of getting those credentials, they teach nothing about the foundations of handling money effectively. They don't talk about paying yourself first. They don't talk about how to do an income and expense sheet as an individual. They talk about tax savings. They talk about investments. They talk about all this fancy esoteric stuff that has nothing to do with the foundations. I had to learn that by scouring books, and I finally came across enough books. And the funniest one was where I learned how to handle money on a foundational level effectively was a program called Debtors Anonymous, a 12-step anonymous program. But that also employed the team approach, where someone who comes in and doesn't know how to handle money effectively or has some emotional issues around it, they have what's called a pressure group, where 2 to 3 other people in the group meet with you go over your finances with you and make suggestions based on their experiences. Again, a team approach. And that is where I learned how to actually do an income and expense statement.
It sounds like one from earlier conversations with you, one of the issues that you had was that the wealthier you were getting, the more in debt you were getting.
Oh,
It kind of contradicts what we imagine. We imagine as we get wealthier, uh, you know, you have less debt.
yeah, no. What I realized, and it has to do with earning more money. So I wasn't creating wealth as my income was growing. I mean, when I was a school teacher, I was making $6,000 a year, and I was short by like $100 a month. I went into sales, doubled my income, and now I was short $200 a month. And as I kept increasing my income, I was short at the end of the month. By the time I'm earning over $100,000 a year, I was short $2,000 a month. And that's when I went into Debtors Anonymous and finally realized it's not making more money that solves the problem. It's knowing what to do with it when it's coming in.
Mm.
And that's where I turn things around.
Yeah. And it's from talking to you, you can actually be somebody who is on a middle income, but relatively contented. You can be on a very high income and be very stressed because
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember crashing my car one time while I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this debt situation. And I'm so absorbed in trying to find solutions while I'm driving, I crashed into the car in front of me. So yeah, tremendous stress, anxiety, sleepless nights, churning stomach, chest pains, you name it, all because of not being able to handle money effectively because I didn't have the tools. They're not taught in school. Parents can't teach what they don't know. It's not even taught to CPA, certified public accountants. It's not taught to certified financial planners. It's absurd that this information is not out there and readily available, which is why I ended up writing the book, Wealth on Any Income.
So tell me what was the trigger event? Do you recall what was this sort of trigger event that led to you changing direction?
Yeah, getting to the point where I'm earning over $100,000 a year and now I'm short $2,000 a month. That was the trigger for me, where it seems like the more money I earn is not solving the problem, and I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, it sounds like that you've also talked about how there's being rich and there's being wealthy. They're not
Completely. Oh yeah, those
the same thing.
two different terms. I mean, you can see if someone's rich. They're wearing fancy clothes or fancy jewelry or driving a fancy car. Okay, that's the external vision of being rich. But wealth is not what you see. When someone looks at me, I mean, if this is YouTube, you could see I'm just wearing some cheap Hawaiian shirt. I picked these up at garage sales and flea markets and things like that. I've got a huge collection of Hawaiian shirts. That's what I wear almost every day. It cost me almost nothing. So people will look at me and think, ordinary, but they don't understand the level of wealth that I have. You know, we own apartment buildings. We have a large stock portfolio. We have, you know, I've done hard money lending. You know, it's just
Visible, isn't it? Really, real wealth visible. I'm a bit of a cynic. When I see somebody driving in a really expensive car, the first thing that goes through my mind is they probably can't afford it. You know, they're probably racking up huge debts just to drive that car.
and very often
Yeah,
that's the case. Not all
yeah.
the time, but I remember years ago when I was doing business coaching, and a gal pulled up in her nice Mercedes, and she asked if she could park it in my driveway and if I would park my car behind it. Thinking, why would she want me to park my car behind hers? When it's time to leave, she could have just pulled out. Well, it turns out she wanted to be sure she the driver of the repossession truck wouldn't spot her car. She was behind on the payments, but she's driving this beautiful new Mercedes.
Yeah.
So I've seen it all the time. So again, rich is what you see, wealthy is what's behind it. You don't see the wealth. You don't see the apartment buildings and the stock portfolio and all the other stuff that we own free and clear.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about that being an entrepreneur is a very lonely affair. But I think maybe there's a misconception that a lot of it is you do a lot of it on your own.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the biggest mistake that I made as well. I mean, the reason the art gallery business went broke was I did that by myself. And when I look over my history of the businesses that were successful and the businesses that were mediocre or a failure, the mediocre and failure businesses were the ones where I was doing it alone, and the successful ones are where I had partners. And that really makes a difference, and you bring together people with different skill sets as well. It's not like you have three salesmen running a company. You have someone who's good with the books, you have someone who's good with the sales, you have someone who's good with the administration. You have to have someone with different skill sets. I mean, let me give you some examples. You're familiar with Apple Computer, I'm sure. Well, yeah, Steve Jobs was a visionary. But if it wasn't for Steve Wozniak, none of that stuff would have been built. Now, a lot of people have heard of Charlie Munger. Have you heard of, do you know who Charlie Munger is? Okay. Have you heard of Warren Buffett?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. So Warren Buffett, the head of Berkshire Hathaway, guess what? Charlie Munger is 1/2 owner of Berkshire Hathaway. But you don't hear about him. He's what's called the execution master. He executes on Warren's visions. And building the rental business, the apartment building business, I was the execution master. The realtor was the visionary. He found the properties, he knew how to remodel them and things like that. And I executed by overseeing the contractors, finding the tenants, managing the tenants. I became wealthy by being the execution master. I didn't have to have a vision.
Yeah, I think that is the flaw. There's this misconception to be an entrepreneur, you somehow need to be all-knowing. And actually, you actually need to know at the beginning, you need to understand yourself. Where are my skill sets? And what are not my skill sets? And not to be, it's okay to say these things, I'm not good at them. I'm going to partner with someone who is.
That makes such a difference. I mean, I could sit down and pay the bills, but instead I have a bookkeeper who spends all her time balancing the accounts and writing the checks and reaching out to the tenants and handling the rent increase notices and all. I mean, the reality is, when I'm working, I'm earning about $750 an hour. Would it make any sense for me to pay bills and reconcile checking accounts and pay someone $750 an hour to do that? That's absurd. So I pay someone $35 an hour to do that. And that frees me up to do the $750 an hour tasks.
Makes total sense. And I'm so interested in everything you're saying, because the world that I operate in partnerships is, it operates along the same lines, in that I've only got access to, it's not just I've got access to the audiences I've got access to, there's also expertise that I've only got a certain amount of expertise. But when I partner with other businesses, there's also insights that they have on a product launch. They have insights on successful webinars. They're things that they're places they've been before that you've not been to, and all of that is just priceless.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I came into the online business, I hired a coach who guided me through all the things about joint ventures and how to work with other partners and what to say and all the rest of that kind of stuff. There's no way I could have succeeded in the online business without those relationships and without that support and without the partnerships and things of that nature. I mean, and the nice thing is, because of the wealth that I created, I'm able to donate 100% of the profits from my online work to charity.
Fantastic. And just looking back at your journey, what would talking to your younger self? What would you say to yourself looking back?
There are a couple of things I would say to my younger self. And one of them is that I learned in my 40s. And that was, it's okay to ask for help. And I was a latchkey child growing up, so I didn't have a lot of parental supervision. I ended up as a child believing whatever I did, I had to do it by myself. And it's not appropriate to have the emotions and the belief system of a 5-year-old running the body of a 40-year-old. And so not being willing to ask for help was a problem. And in a workshop, I was able to free myself of that. And I started not only asking for help, but realizing it's a gift you give to other people when you ask them for help, because other people feel good about helping. And so that was lesson number one that I would have taught to my younger self, that it's okay to ask for help. And I would have started providing examples. The second thing, which is tied to asking for help, is recognizing you don't have to do things by yourself. And that's, like when I grew the rental business, it was a team effort. It wasn't a solo effort. So I was able to break up those two things together. One, by asking for help, and two, being willing to be a part of a team to grow a business.
I think that there's a couple of things you said there. I think that are worth expounding on. I think the first one is the when you're a latchkey kid. I think that maybe where entrepreneurs go very wrong is that they've got maybe coping mechanisms they had when they were children, right? There are situations where it can be tough. If you're either in a family where you don't have support from your parents, you're on your own, or maybe you grew up at school, you didn't have friends, so you created your sort of survival mechanisms.
Yes.
Those survival mechanisms may have been necessary during your childhood, but when you're in adulthood going into business, it's a completely different game, and you've got to move on from those mechanisms.
Danny, that is very insightful. Those survival mechanisms you create as a child do not support you as an adult.
Yeah, correct. And I think the other thing is it was worth talking about is asking for help, because I think there's this great misunderstanding that people have that you can't ask for help because people resent being asked, and actually I can't recall any situation where where you've asked them for help has not been more than not just willing but delighted to help you.
Yeah. Now there is a difference from the standpoint of discernment. In other words, there are people in your life that you can ask help of, and there are people in your life you shouldn't ask help of.
Correct.
And so recognizing that up front means if you're going to ask for help, you go to the people who are willing, not to the people who will resent it or put you down or tell you don't deserve it.
Correct. And that again could be to do with mechanisms you had when you were younger, right?
Yes, correct.
But certainly in my experience, and again, I'm going back to the one of joint ventures, that people, it's wired into people's DNA that people want to help other entrepreneurs. When I actually set up in June of this year, I didn't really ask for help, but I had lots of people saying, "Oh wow, you're setting up this new venture. It sounds really exciting. What can I do to support you? You've got a webinar coming up. Can I promote it?" And that was without me asking anybody.
Exactly. So you can imagine if you actually asked, it would be like opening up a fire hose.
Correct. So really, my final question to you is, what would your kind of number one piece of advice be to budding entrepreneurs who are listening to our discussion?
It would be around knowing their numbers. It would be knowing that you know how to determine your income and expenses, and if not, get help in that area, because the numbers are what the business will survive on. If you're running your business and the expenses are higher than the income, it's going to be failure. It's going to be traumatic. It's going to be stressful. And so It's knowing your numbers, number one, and number two, knowing you don't have to do it on your own. And it doesn't matter if you have a partner, if you hire a coach. The point is, know your numbers and don't do it by yourself. Have a team, create a team, any kind of team, banker, accountant, attorney, bookkeeper, coach, whatever.
So many of our listeners will be really intrigued to hear more about what you do and find out where they can find out more. So where, if our listeners would like to find out more about you, where should they go?
Great place to go is my website. It's wealthonanyincome.com. And if they go to /TEDx, they can do two things. One, they'll hear my TEDx talk on how we've been programmed to believe it's better to be poor than to be wealthy. And the cure is also on that page, and it's a 9-step roadmap that leads to complete financial choice and philanthropy, and an explanation of each of the 9 steps.
That's fantastic. Well, Rennie, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Danny. It's great to reconnect, and I love the journey that you're on.
Thank you.